The front door clicked shut far more quietly than Jonathan Whitmore intended, but his heart was already pounding too loudly to notice. It was barely 3 in the afternoon, hours earlier than he was ever home. A board meeting had collapsed, his head throbbed with numbers and arguments, and all he wanted was to see his son's face, even if only for a moment before disappearing back into work. What he did not expect was the sight waiting for him at the end of the hallway, a sight so shocking that his breath caught and his knees nearly buckled. Jonathan stood frozen as voices drifted from the living room. His 7-year-old son, Ethan, was crying. Not the quick, embarrassed sniffle of a boy who had fallen, but deep, broken sobs. And then he heard another voice, soft, steady, unfamiliar in that tone. It was Maria's voice, the maid he had hired only 3 months earlier. Jonathan's mind raced. Why was his son crying like that? And why was Maria speaking in a hushed, intimate way, as if trying to soothe a wound far deeper than scraped knees? Jonathan stepped closer, his chest tightening. When he reached the doorway, his vision swam. Maria was sitting on the floor, Ethan between her knees. His shirt was pulled slightly up, and Maria's hands were gently pressed against his back. Ethan's small body shook as she held him close, rocking him slowly. For a split second, Jonathan's thoughts turned dark and panicked. A cold wave rushed through him, and he nearly fainted where he stood. Maria. Jonathan's voice burst out sharper than he meant. What on earth is going on? Maria looked up, startled, her eyes wide with fear. She immediately pulled her hands away and stood, her face pale. Mr. Whitmore. I can explain. Ethan twisted around, tears streaking his cheeks. Daddy. He ran to Jonathan, burying his face in his father's suit jacket. Jonathan held him tightly, his hands trembling as he searched his son's body for any sign of harm. Ethan clung to him, sobbing harder now. Jonathan looked back at Maria, anger and confusion battling inside him. Explain, he said, his voice low and strained. Maria swallowed hard. Ethan had a panic attack, she said softly. He couldn't breathe properly. I've seen them before. I was trying to calm him down. Jonathan blinked. A panic attack. He looked down at Ethan. His son nodded slightly against his chest. I thought my chest was going to explode, Ethan whispered. Maria told me to breathe with her. Jonathan's anger faltered, replaced by something heavier, guilt. He carried Ethan to the couch and sat down, holding him close. Maria stood a few steps away, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her eyes filled with worry. How long has this been happening? Jonathan asked quietly. Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. Sometimes, he said, mostly when I think too much. Jonathan's throat tightened. He thought of all the nights Ethan had gone to bed alone while he stayed at the office. Of the mornings Jonathan left before sunrise, whispering apologies to a sleeping child who never heard them. Maria spoke again, carefully. He told me he feels scared a lot. That he worries something bad will happen to you. Or that you won't come home. Jonathan closed his eyes. Each word landed like a blow. He had built an empire. Glass towers, investments, headlines, but somehow failed to notice the silent cracks forming in his own home. That evening, Jonathan sent Maria home early, though not before apologizing for raising his voice. After Ethan fell asleep, Jonathan sat alone in his study, the city lights glowing beyond the windows. His reflection stared back at him in the dark glass, a powerful man who suddenly felt very small. The next day, Jonathan tried to work as usual, but numbers blurred on the screen. Ethan's tear-streaked face haunted him. At noon, he shocked his assistant by canceling his afternoon meetings. Family matter, he said, and for once, it wasn't a lie. When Jonathan got home, Ethan was doing homework at the kitchen table, Maria nearby, quietly folding laundry. Ethan's face lit up when he saw his father. You're home early again. Jonathan smiled, a real smile this time. I thought we could have dinner together, he said. That evening, over spaghetti and laughter, Jonathan learned things about his son he had never known. Ethan loved drawing churches because they felt safe, and he prayed every night for his father to be happy. Maria listened quietly, occasionally smiling, occasionally wiping her eyes when she thought no one noticed. Over the following weeks, Jonathan made changes that shocked everyone around him. He left the office by 6. He attended Ethan's school assembly. He learned how to cook pancakes on Sunday mornings. And slowly, Ethan's panic attacks became less frequent. One evening, Jonathan asked Maria to sit down with him after Ethan went to bed. She looked nervous, but obeyed. "I owe you an apology," Jonathan said sincerely. "And my thanks. You helped my son when I didn't even realize he needed help." Maria nodded, her eyes gentle. "I lost my own son once," she said quietly. "He was Ethan's age. I see his fear, and I couldn't ignore it." Jonathan felt a lump rise in his throat. "I'm glad you didn't," he said. Months passed, and the Whitmore house changed. It became warmer, louder, filled with shared meals and prayers whispered before bed. Jonathan learned that success meant nothing if it cost him his child's peace. On Ethan's 8th birthday, Jonathan stood watching as his son laughed with friends, Maria standing nearby, smiling proudly. Jonathan realized that the moment he nearly fainted in fear had been the moment that saved his family. That night, Jonathan tucked Ethan into bed. "Daddy," Ethan asked sleepily, "are you going to work late tomorrow?" Jonathan shook his head and kissed his son's forehead. "No," he said softly. "Nothing is more important than you." And for the first time in a long time, Ethan fell asleep without fear, safe in the knowledge that his father was finally home, not just in body, but in heart.